Hello and welcome to another Thursday interview here on Viking.TV with me, Anne Diamond. As you can probably tell from the background, certainly if you've been on one of the ships, you'll know that I'm on an ocean ship at the moment. I'm on the Viking Sea. And I've met a most extraordinary man that I thought you would also like to meet, because he is a profound talent, a great entertainer, an accomplished musician. And I think he loves to spread the word, particularly to young people all over the world, that music is an inspiration and is probably the saving grace of the next generation. That's what he believes, and we'll hear him talk about that later. To give you a clue, if you don't know him very well, he's a violinist, an amazing violinist. He plays a bright blue violin. And as I said, he's a great ambassador for music for young people. And as if that wasn't enough, he has passed his incredible talent on to his two young sons. And we'll be meeting them later as well. Right now, though, let me introduce you to an amazing musician, a great entertainer, and quite a personality, Mr. Doug Cameron. Doug, welcome to Viking.TV.
Oh, it's good.
Oh, brilliant. Honestly, you make the violin do all the talking for you.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you as well because everybody has been so enraptured by your performances.
Oh, isn't that nice?
Well, they really have. And they love your character too, because you tell us about yourself. And you have had an amazing journey, because you started playing that violin, or not that particular one, but other violins, when you were very little, didn't you?
Yeah, when I was 5 years old, I started the violin. You know, when I was 5, I loved classical music. I loved the Beethoven Violin Concerto. Back then we had records, you know, and I used to put this record on, and I had a whole story in my mind about a little boy, you know, different parts of the concerto, where here he's going to the stream, and here he's talking to his dog, and just this whole story that I developed in my mind about this Beethoven Violin Concerto. So
did you come from a musical family then?
Yeah, my mom was a singer and a songwriter. My mom used to sing with Rosemary Clooney and the Clooney sisters on a station called WLW out of Cincinnati. When they sing live on the radio, they'd be handed a piece of music and they're singing live on the radio. My mom actually replaced Doris Day on a show called Moon River in Cincinnati, Ohio. But her biggest claim to fame is my mom wrote and sang the, wait for it, Roadrunner cartoon theme song.
Now you see, I've been racking my brain to try and think of it.
Roadrunner, if you're on a highway, Roadrunner goes beep beep. Roadrunner, the coyote's after you. Roadrunner, if he catches you, you're through.
Yeah, so your mother sang
She wrote that and sang
it. She wrote
yeah.
it and sang it. Wow.
She made more royalties off of that than I made off of 10 records.
I was going to say, you could probably live off that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So music was always in your house?
Always in the house, yeah. Yeah.
So when did you, I mean, it takes a lot for a 5-year-old to think, I want to learn the violin, because as far as I'm concerned, it takes about 5 years to learn how to hold it before you can even play it. So what made you so determined to do that? And did your parents indulge you? Did they buy you a little violin?
My parents got me a violin from Christmas, and started with the violin lessons, and always encouraged me and you know, made me practice every day, and I didn't like that much.
No.
But they made me practice a half an hour a day. And that's how I got started.
But just to keep at something as serious as the violin, you have to have probably shown talent straight away. So your parents must have had a lot of faith in you that actually this kid knows what he's doing.
I did have talent. I progressed quickly, and you know, the other thing is I learned performing at a very early age. Whenever my parents had a party, my sister's a cellist. We'd be in bed. They'd drag us out of bed and say, "You're going to perform now," you know. And it was always part of our thing that we had to perform, you know.
But that's important, isn't it? Because with music, it's not just about playing it for yourself, it's about playing it for other people.
Right, my mom said,
and getting that feedback.
Yeah, my mom used to say it's so important to play for people, you know, when the when the mailman would come, she'd pull the mailman in and say, no, you got to listen to Dougie play something.
So as a little boy growing up then and getting better and better at the violin, what was your ambition?
I think I always wanted to be a violinist of some sort, and later on, when I got to be a teenager, I started delving into different styles and rock stuff and different jazz and rock and country fiddle, and I started getting into all of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the great thing that you do so much now, is you do what we call now crossover. You can play a Bach violin concerto if you want, or you can play jazz, or you can play just sort of, I don't know, country music, as you said. Anything goes. Yeah.
I think that's what people like, is a variety, the different, especially on a ship, as you probably know, I have like 10 records out there, more jazz oriented. I've been signed to different record labels, and a lot of my own, they consist of a lot of my own music.
Yeah.
But I learned, in this industry, you have to come up with a show that you feel good about, that you feel is musically,
sort of diverse.
Something you're proud of, but also that people can relate to and enjoy.
Well, yeah, I guess you learn a lot from your audience. What do they like? What do they respond to?
Yeah.
And different audiences in different places.
Yeah.
And you've been all over the world now, playing to
yeah.
different sorts of audiences. Are different parts of the world different in their musical tastes?
Different parts of the world are different in the way that they react to the music. Sometimes, different parts are not as enthusiastic as an American audience would be, and you have to understand that doesn't mean that they're not enjoying it just as much. They just aren't as over the top as maybe a European audience or a Spanish audience or even a Japanese audience. So when I go to Japan, they're very, very kind and very interested in the music, but they're not overreactive in the way that they respond to your...
And yet the Japanese, particularly with the violin, such a relationship with the violin, because anyone who's ever learned the violin probably knows about Suzuki.
Yeah.
And I know that you're very, very bonded with Suzuki and the methods.
Right. I have 2 instructional series out for the violin. One is my first series. It's a 4-part series that it's got a lot of my own music, and it comes with backing tracks and a DVD each volume. And the second series is called Swing Your Strings, and I take Suzuki songs and add jazz and hip hop and Celtic and country and reggae to make it fun and exciting for kids. And that's been endorsed by the International Suzuki Association. So it's a fun series. My son Alex actually helps me with that series.
We will talk about your son in a second, but anyone watching right now who's a parent who's been dragged their kids along to a Suzuki class knows that you start with Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, basically, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it sounds.
I've been there.
And then it goes...
Yeah. And then you do more with it.
It starts, well, I do Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in all different styles. So different rhythms, on my series, They have to learn these, in this one version of Twinkle, I do it all different reggae rhythms and everything.
Yeah.
And so that they can learn how to play different styles, because I worked as a studio musician in LA for many years, and you have to play like a horn player. You have to be able to play anything. And, different, not just classical. You have to really understand how to play rhythmic syncopations and all that kind of stuff. So that gives them a head start for that.
Yeah, and it probably also teaches them that it's not just the classical way of doing it. It might light a fire in them in some other way.
Yeah. And you want music to be fun. You want kids to continue to play and find their voice, and I think that being shown different styles really helps.
Well, I know you're a great ambassador for young people learning music, but before we talk about that, what sort of amazing bands have you played with in your time? What are the standout moments?
Oh, a lot of standout moments. I remember I got to play Dust in the Wind with Kansas. I was on a bill with Kansas, and backstage, Steve Morse was a guitar player. Said, "Hey, would you play Dust in the Wind with us?" And I said, "Sure." And he goes, "Let me show you Dust in the Wind." He goes, I said, "I know Dust in the Wind." He goes, "No, I got to show you Dust in the Wind." So we went backstage, and he showed me Dust in the Wind. And when I went out to play Dust in the Wind, everybody held up their lighters. All of a sudden, everybody, you know, and I never experienced that.
And that
before.
must be incredible.
It was cool, yeah.
I mean, just for us, who you see it on video, but to actually be standing there on stage and see all of those little lighters. Like now people use their smartphones.
Yeah, I did it
now,
on this ship once, and they all held up their cell phones. It had the same effect.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah. But I think I used to, I don't know if I should get into this, but my biggest crazy experience that changed my life is I was in school in Buffalo, New York. I was playing a club in Buffalo, and Greg Allman from the Allman Brothers Band walked in. And I used to love the Allman Brothers. I could play all the, whipping post. One way out, baby. So I could do all that, And I invited him to sit in with us.
What, you say he just walked in though? Why?
Well, he was living in Buffalo with a psychiatrist for drug rehabilitation and alcoholism, actually. So he was living in Buffalo. He was married to Cher at the time.
Oh, my goodness.
So I would, he'd call me up and say, well, come on over and jam with me. I'd go to this guy's house. And he'd call me up and say, Cher's in town. We're going to go apple picking. And a limo pulls up in front of my dormitory room with Greg and Cher in it. We go off apple picking in Orchard Park. Oh. Anyway, we did this surprise concert for this kid from a Catholic school. Invites him to ask him if he'd do a surprise concert. So he asked me to put a band together. I put a band together with the Hammond B3 and everything because he loved that's what he played. And the kids knew nothing about it. We opened the curtain, and it's Greg Allman and me and this band. And Cher comes into town.
Oh, brilliant.
And so he invited me to LA. That's how I ended up in LA. And when I moved to LA, first 2 weeks I lived at Cher's house in Beverly Hills. That was my introduction to LA.
That's quite something.
But playing with him was amazing. He was quite a character, but I loved that. Yeah. I loved the Allman Brothers. I couldn't believe that happened.
Well, that was an incredible, one of those pinch me moments. Are there any more?
Oh, well, I think, one of my biggest influences was the Paul from Peter, Paul and Mary. And I actually grew up with him because he was a friend of my dad's. My dad had him and his wife visit us where we lived in Rye, New York, and they ended up buying the house across this mill pond from us. And I did my first recording sessions with him. And even up now, I tour with him, and I've been to Japan with him and recorded.
With Peter, Paul and Mary?
Paul from the Peter, Paul and Mary.
From Paul, yeah.
His name is really Noel.
Oh.
And he's a very dear friend, and he was a big influence. I mean, because when I was little, Peter, Paul and Mary were huge.
Oh,
I mean, they were like the
too,
Beatles.
In Britain, yeah.
We'd go see a concert and be backstage, and he was like a god to me. And now he's a dear friend. But some of my other highlights, I got asked to work with Doc Severinsen from the Tonight Show band in America. He auditioned me in my little house by Universal Studios. I remember he came by after a show, and I had my amps set up, 200-watt amps, and he brought his trumpet, and I couldn't even hear my amps. The trumpet was so loud.
Wow.
But he was an amazing musician. He practiced all the time. I mean, we'd go on tour, and you'd hear in his hotel room all day long, he'd be practicing that trumpet, and he really showed me, what dedication is.
Do you practice?
I do practice, yeah. But I practice every day, but with all of the other things that we have to do with technology, and I also edit video, and I also have a studio in my house, and so that takes time up too, doing all of that. So I do practice every day.
Do you do scales and things like that?
Yeah, I do scales.
Oh, play me a scale. This is how a professional plays a scale.
I start out very slow. Working on vibrato and through all the scales, yeah, but I start, slowly to get my vibrato happening, and
that's a lesson to all the children watching, isn't it? Is that you still have to do your scales.
yeah.
You never be free of the scales.
Yeah, you have to start with scales.
Yeah.
And
tell me about the violin, because I know that you do have a Stradivarius, don't you?
No, I don't. I did play a Stradivarius for my. I mean, if I had a Stradivarius, I'd be a very wealthy guy. Stradivarius.
Yeah. Well, it was lent to you, I thought.
It was lent to me by a doctor, because the doctors now all the Stradivariuses. For my Celtic record, I recorded my Celtic record on a Stradivarius, 1714 Stradivarius, which is the golden period Stradivarius, when it's thought he made his best instruments. In fact, Perlman has, I believe, a 1715 Stradivarius. Itzhak Perlman. And so I got to keep this in my house, in my studio, for 2 weeks. And I had to take out an insurance policy with Lloyd's of London to keep this violin, and it is a beautiful violin, and I recorded my Celtic record with this.
Well, because I mean, those Stradivariuses, or they all have a history. Usually, their owners have been very well catalogued. So I mean, it's not just holding an instrument in your hand; it is holding a piece of history, but also a personality. They say that the different violins
all very different personalities. They all have a distinct, especially low on the violin, the G string, the low string, has a beautiful, sound. You just can't even quantify it. But as you said, people tell me all the time, I have a violin, I think it says it's Stradivarius. Well, it's not a Stradivarius, it's a Strad copy, because everybody knows where every Stradivarius is. It's, as you said, it's very well cataloged. Who owns it, who owned it, who played it. And there's only, I think, around 500 Strads around now. Some were lost in the war, but yeah. They are beautiful violins, but you really notice it live. I put my violin up against the Stradivarius, and I record my violin next to the Strad. The Strad sounded better, but with EQ and other recording aspects, you can make any violin sound pretty good.
Well, you make that one sound good, and you are well known for this very beautiful blue violin.
Yeah.
So what is it? Where did it come from, and why is it blue?
I like blue. I've always had blue violins, even before I had these violins made. But this is a violin maker from Tampa. His name is John Importuno, and he's from the Italian tradition. He makes these. This is really an acoustic violin, as you can see, the way I play it.
Yeah.
And it's got my logo. That's my logo in Mother of Pearl. And you can see in the back, it's beautiful wood. Oh. It's really a beautifully made violin. And as I said, my whole family plays the violin. We all play these violins now. And in my show, it's an electric violin. It's got a pickup built into the bridge. So it's and then I have a wireless transmitter. There's where you plug the violin in, and below is my transmitter, so it's wireless. I don't need wires.
So yes, you can still walk around the stage and do all your thing, but it is still electric.
It's electric. Yeah.
I wondered how you did that.
Yeah. I used to have a gas violin, but the tanks were so heavy. Gas is getting
carry them on your back.
expensive.
That's what I wanted to ask you, actually. Watching you last night, I mean, for hours, you are holding a violin in the way a violin has to be held. You're also walking around the stage and you're dancing a bit and all the rest of it. And your fingers are covering the frets like lightning. What does an older violinist fear most? Do violinists suffer from rheumatism or back trouble, or what? What is the thing that you fear as you grow older when you're a violinist?
Well, actually, I'm doing pretty good. I feel like
I'm not for a minute alleging that you are showing signs.
I have a friend who's a very fine violinist, Clayton Hassler, and he studied with Milstein, who's a wonderful violinist, and he was a top concertmaster in the studio, still plays in the studios. He played all the solos on Ratatouille, Up. He was Jamie Horner's concertmaster for Titanic, and he developed focal dystonia. He lost the ability to use his third and fourth finger. And it's an amazing story. I put a whole video of him on YouTube, and it's one of my most popular videos. He plays the violin with two fingers now. He plays the violin. He plays the. I videoed him performing the whole Tchaikovsky first movement of the Tchaikovsky with 2 fingers.
So just 2 fingers
Two
are redundant.
fingers,
They
like,
just
you know,
don't work.
His 3rd and 4th finger don't work anymore, and he still works in the studios. He plays so beautifully that they still hire him to work in the studios with, and he plays with 2 fingers, and he feels like he does better with than a lot of the guys with 4 fingers.
What an extraordinary thing.
Yeah, it's sort of the Django Reinhardt story. I don't know if you've heard about Django. Reinhardt was a famous Hot Club of France guitarist, and he, in an accident in a fire, he lost the ability to use 2 of his fingers, and he played the guitar with 2 fingers.
My goodness.
We actually have a website together, a teaching website called Violin Mastery, and we both teach from that website and offer our publications. And he's got some amazing he has a whole series on the Kreutzer etudes, which are that's one of the famous Kreutzer etudes, and how to approach them. And then he's got a series on Paganini. But he's an amazing guy. I mean, to really, I think I'd give up. I don't see how I would keep playing the violin if I lost my 3rd and 4th finger. But he perseveres. Clayton Hassler is his name. Yeah.
Tell me more about the Stradivarius story you wanted to say.
Well, when I had this Strat in my house, my acoustic violin. I don't record with this violin. I record with my acoustic violin, which is a nice violin. It's a French violin, an Aubry, by a violin maker that lived actually in the UK around the turn of the century. But it's a nice violin, but I felt like my violin was getting jealous of this Stradivarius. So I had to talk to my violin. I said, look, this girl is not going to be here that long. She's going to be leaving in a few weeks, and I still love you. You're still going to be on the record, and so don't fret about it. You do develop a personal relationship.
But you must do. You spend hours with them, don't you? Hours and hours and hours, and you depend on them. They depend on you.
Yeah.
In fact, you need each other. Really,
yeah, we do.
Yeah. Let's go. You've been talking, occasionally talking about your sons, and I know you're a great ambassador for children learning music, but you couldn't be more representative of that than in your own family. Because you've got 2 sons. I was going to say little boys. They're not so little anymore.
Not so little anymore.
But
no.
they also have inherited your incredible talent.
Yes, I'm very proud of my boys. In fact, it's sort of my focus now is my boys and what they're doing and how to get them moving with music, which I feel like I've done very well. My older son, Alex, is now playing the entire Tchaikovsky violin concerto for memory. He's winning concerto competitions. And they both play in my show. They've been playing in my show since they can remember. I think you might even have some footage of them playing when they were this high. They don't even play.
Yeah.
They just follow me around with their violins. My biggest video on YouTube is my son, Sean. It's close to 4 million hits of him following me around on the Orange Blossom Special. But I work very hard with them. I practice with them every day when I'm home.
It's interesting, isn't it? If you are the parent and you are a talented musician yourself, how much is nature and how much is nurture when you see this happening with your own kids?
I think it's a combination of both. But I will say that many musicians don't elect to work with their kids, and I understand that it's not easy. They give me the runaround. When I do have teachers. Clayton has worked with Alex, and different teachers have worked with Alex as well, and there is a certain attention that they give.
One person that they don't
teachers
give to a
that I don't seem to get. I have to fight for their attention, but I make them practice, and when I sit with them when they practice, and I make them practice properly and slowly, and I think I told you the story about Itzhak Perlman, who Alex got to play with Itzhak Perlman.
Alex got to play with him.
Yeah, Alex did, the older one.
Yeah. What was the occasion?
Perlman does a residency in Sarasota every year, and he invites young string players to audition for this little concert that they do. They learn a piece of music, and everybody's got to audition. And you audition virtually. You have to send in a video.
Yeah.
And Alex won. He got to be a part of it, and he got to play with Perlman. Just a little bit of an interesting story. After the concert, he was invited to get Perlman's signature, and he got in line. He was the last in line, and by the time he got up there, his Perlman's minder said, "Sorry, he's got to go." Well, he was cried all the way home in the car. A couple months later, he was playing in our town in Fort Myers. I live in Fort Myers now, at the Barber Man. I called the people from Sarasota and who I had a relationship with, and I said, "Is there any way I could get backstage?" You know, so they got me backstage passes. You know, we go backstage and there's nobody there. We're walking backstage and up pulls Perlman in his scooter. He's on a scooter now, and he says hi. And Alex wore his shirt that he wore for this concert.
Yeah.
And he goes, "I remember you." Oh. And so he said, "Mr. Perlman, you remember I got to play with you and all that." And he said, well, great. You know, what are you working on? He said, "I'm working on the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto." And at the time, he was maybe 12 or 13. You know, Perlman goes, "Whoa, yeah. Really? Are you? You know?" He said, "Yeah, I have it here. Will you sign it?" So Perlman signed his Tchaikovsky.
Oh, lovely.
And it said, "Dear Alex, practice slowly, Itzhak Perlman." So every time he tries to go off on the violin, I say, "Let me show you the cover of your Tchaikovsky." You know.
Practice slowly.
Practice slowly.
Well,
That's
couldn't come from a better person,
Yeah.
could it? That's amazing. Actually, you talk of Alex. You've got a lovely way of introducing the audience to Alex.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can show everybody now what you do when you're on stage, because it's absolutely charming what you do.
Oh,
so I think you've got the computer set up there, because this is all about a live satellite link where you end up playing a duet across a satellite link with little Alex. So show us what you do when you're on stage. All right.
Well, I set this up that the first of all, I always tell a joke that I saw the captain in the hallway and he said, "Get out of my way."
Yeah, that always works.
But then I said, he's a really nice guy, and the captain, I told him I miss my family so much and how much I love playing with them, and being on this long transatlantic, I get to missing them. He says, "Why don't we set up something? I'll stand on top of the bridge with a satellite dish." So this is how I set this up, really. It's not really the case. But so I said, the captain's standing on top of the bridge with a satellite dish trying to bring in the signal of my son in Fort Myers. That's how I set it up. And then I roll this video. And I go, "Hold it up higher, Captain, hold it up higher." Oh, there we go. That's perfect, Captain. "Hi, Alex.
Hi.
How's it going?"
Good.
Hey, and could you say hi to everybody?
Hi, everyone.
Oh, hi, Alex. Hi.
And what are we going to play?
We're going to play the Bach double violin.
All right, let's give it a whirl. a bow, Alex.
Excellent. Doug, that must make you so proud to be able to play that piece of music, for heaven's sake, with your son, aged, 13 then. That is a knockout.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, as I told you, he plays my whole show. He could play my whole show, and when I perform with him and Alec and Sean. Now Sean has played the violin for years, and he plays well. He does play well. He's not the level of Alex, but he switched to the sax, and he's doing very well on the sax. So he has features in my show on the sax, and but when I work with them, I let them kind of take over, and I sort of accompany them in the background. And it's really like an out-of-body experience.
I've noticed you do that in some of the videos I've watched. You get them going, and then you step back.
I step back, and it's like watching myself. I mean, they play like me. They playing all of my own music, my own arrangements, and.
Gee's your joy of man's desiring. It has to be one of the most favourite pieces of music of nearly anybody watching, I'm sure, at the moment. You have this lovely setting of it. But again, I watched you, and you get your family going, and then you stand back, and they blossom on stage, and they love that music, and they can play it so beautifully, and it just sounds fantastic. Let's have a look at it. So tell me about, your whole philosophy really on music and children particularly, because you don't just enthuse your children, you don't just enthuse children in various workshops, you go all over the world doing it.
That's right. I've been teaching in Cuba as well. I've taught at the Ciudad de las Artes in different schools all around Cuba. I also got to play the Havana Jazz Festival when I was down there as one of the few American acts. These Cuban kids are so enthusiastic about having an American come, and they were so gracious to me when I went down there to teach, and excited to see different styles. But man, these Cuban kids, they have Latin rhythm in their blood. They play so rhythmically. But I've taught all over the world. And I feel that it is so important that young people are afforded at least the opportunity to be exposed, to music and the arts. And it doesn't matter to me whether you make that your life's work. Your kids played the Suzuki, played the violin.
Played the violin in their time. Yeah.
And now you say they're sort of coming back to it.
Yes. I think it never leaves you.
It never leaves you, and music is. Not only is it discipline, reading music is like solving mathematical equations on the fly, one after another. And, it's like being a mathematician. And you have to, if you're good at reading music, you're actually reading ahead of where you're playing.
Yeah.
And the further ahead of where you can read, and then just imagine how your brain has to work to be reading bars ahead and playing the bars that you've just put into your mind, So that's how a good sight reads music. But also playing with other people. That's why I personally feel that a violin is a better instrument in a sense, in certain ways, than the piano, because the piano you sit all alone by the piano, but a violin you get to play in an orchestra, or a trumpet, or a sax, you get to play in a band. So I feel it's very important that people, that young kids are at least afforded that opportunity. And the opportunities are, sadly enough, falling by the wayside.
I know so many schools are giving up teaching music. They say it's difficult because you have to buy instruments. But it is very important for the soul, and as we agree, it doesn't leave you. You can pick it up later in life. And I always say that, they talk about how you have to keep your brain active into later life by doing Sudoku or crossword puzzles or something like that. I say read music. If you can sit down at a piano, read music and play, that is surely brain training.
Later in life, my mom, she got Alzheimer's. She played the piano, and she could still go over to the piano and play the piano beautifully, like she always, she remembered that, that becomes part of your memory. And I think it's so important that that we care, and especially in the more impoverished communities. These, the frustration that I have, a lot of the master classes that I teach, I'm teaching kids that they've already got it. They've got the parents that are taking care of them, and I want to know how to get to these kids that don't get that opportunity. And there are programs now, like in Miami, the Miami String Program, where they are getting instruments and trying to get them to get started with the violin. Now you look at like Venezuela, where Dudamel is from, the conductor of the LA Phil. He comes from Venezuela, where these kids that have nothing, they're coming out of gangs, and they're given a violin, they play in these orchestras, and it's amazing what they have accomplished down there with this music programs that go on.
Yeah, you just got to get the instruments to them, and
now the government's not that amazing.
And enlightened
these days.
tuition.
Yeah.
Interesting teachers like you. Do you think you'll go on doing this sort of thing? Go on teaching, go on doing workshops, and is that where your future lies? I mean, you're obviously a born entertainer. You can't help that, but somewhere along the line, will you slow up? I
think I will probably go more into teaching and mentor my kids, and maybe they'll get too old to want my mentoring. But I work with Alex on a lot of different projects. So I just did he wrote a song, I helped him with it, and he ended up winning the Florida songwriting competition.
Wow.
Helped him out. I got a lot of my friends to play on it, including Vinny Colaiuta, who's Sting's drummer, played on his song, and a lot of my friends from LA. You can do all this. You can send every decent musician has a studio, and they're capable of recording in their home. So you can send the file to them, and they add their stuff. This is how I work with my LA guys. I've limited my performing on ships to one a month, and probably will limit it a little bit more, because I don't want to spend time away from the family. Now the family sometimes comes with me, and we perform as a family on ships, and that's always, people love that, I got to tell you. But I want to spend, these are golden times, and I don't want to be away too long and mentor the kids. But I think I will continue on teaching, and I'll play for as long as I can keep it going. And I also write. I would like to, get back to recording. I was in the middle of working on I have a bunch of Cuban friends down in Cuba, and working on a sort of an updated Buena Vista Social Club CD with younger Cuban musicians, and I even had one of the guys from the Buena Vista Social Club was going to join me, but it all stopped, unfortunately, with the pandemic and everything. So,
although musicians did find a way to even compose together and play together during the pandemic.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and
we learned a lot more about the technical side of things, didn't we?
Yeah. And I teach on Skype. I teach also on iChat and Zoom at times, but there is sort of a delay. It's you can't really play together because there's a delay in the signal. And
what you need is the captain standing up there with the satellite dish.
I know,
because that seems to work.
That worked very well.
Didn't it? Look, Doug, it's been absolutely fabulous to meet you. It's even more fun listening to you and watching you on stage.
Well, this has been a pleasure.
It's been brilliant. Do give our love to your family now.
I will. Yeah.
Alex and Sean aren't little anymore. How old are they?
Alex is 15. He's going to be 16 next week, and he has his learner's permit, which is the scariest thing, because the constant thing that I have to say is slow down. Sean is 13. So 13 and now 16.
Well, we look forward to hearing an awful lot more of the whole family in the coming years.
Well, thank
but
you
yeah,
very much.
tell Alex, it's just like it's at Perman told him, practice slowly.
I
The same
tell
goes
him
for
that
driving
every
a
day.
car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But in
this
the
is
meantime,
a great, this Viking, I think they do a fantastic job, and the clientele really seems to have their head open to different stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they're not, they're explorers. I think that's the reason
they are.
why
It's what Viking like to call them, curious travellers.
Yeah, yeah. And I
And-
can tell the difference, you know, when you
Wasn't
present
that nice?
things out of the box and they eat it up.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
It's
We really do.
different. It's a different thing here, really.
Oh,
yeah.
good. Thank you very much. Anyway, it's been brilliant meeting you. And like I said, love to the family. And maybe we'll all meet up again one day. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Anne.
Thank you.